So, boys and girls, today we are looking at, so the main thing that we're looking at today, right, is narrative comprehension over here. And what is it about narrative comprehension that we're looking at? We're looking at making judgments, right, evaluative judgments, which means we need to evaluate certain elements of the narrative comprehension. Now, where do we see our narrative comprehension in? We see it in our paper 2. Normally, it's our section B, right? It's the one that's worth 25 marks. And they give you a lot of questions, like various types of questions, right? Regarding a narrative story. So narrative just means that it's a story. Like there's a beginning, there's like an exciting part, and then there's an ending to it. That's a narrative, right? Most of the time, it's meant to be fictional, all right? Sometimes it can be non-fictional, like a memoir, right? Or an autobiography where a person writes about their real life experiences in a narrative form. Most of the time, though, narratives are fictional, okay? And you'll normally find it in section B, because section C, right, is non-narrative. It's your non-fictional one. It's the one where you have to write your summary on. All right, that's your section C. So that is with reference to your O-level format. I'm not sure where your teachers are at with your current progress. Whether they're giving you all 3 sections for your end of year exams or not, that's really up to your school, right? I can't tell what your school teachers are going to do, because school teachers are given a lot of freedom as to what they want to teach their students and how they want to teach them. So their main job is to ensure that by the end of Sec 4 or Sec 5, you are ready to take your O-levels, right? So whenever I refer to exam papers, I will always speak as if we are talking about the O-levels, because that's the final frontier, right? It's the last thing that you're aiming for, your O-levels at the end of the day. So we'll be looking at that, all right? And Arjun has rejoined us. How is your camera faring, Arjun? Yes, it's working now. Excellent.
Yeah.
I see you. Great. All right, so David has come in. Who else is this? Someone else is coming in. Yes, we have Varun. Okay, Varun is here. Excellent. Okay, so apart from that, today we are going to talk about some current affairs as well, but the main bulk of today's lesson is about narrative comprehension, right? And the final points of narrative comprehension. You know how in primary school you have to do some inference, right? Regarding the characters in the story and stuff like that. Now in secondary school, you would have to do even more inference, okay, if that makes sense. So it's supposed to be like for the difficulty level to go up. That's why you have to make more inferences as compared to primary school. In your PSLE, you probably had like 2 questions that were inferential, maximum 2, right? That were inferential for your comprehension part. For secondary school, you can be sure that out of the like at least, right, like 8 to 12 questions that they give you, around like 4 or 5 need a little bit of inference at least. Okay, so that's what we're looking at today. So just a reminder, these are the house rules. So more specifically for Chen Hong, please leave your microphone muted at all times and leave your video turned on. If you want to ask me anything, or you want to answer a question, or you want to share some feedback, chat with me, right? Use the chat function. If you really want to say something, just raise your hand. All right, on Zoom, right? There's a raise hand function on Zoom. Wait for my permission to unmute yourself, and then you can start speaking. If you want to go to the toilet, all right, you need not get my permission. Just inform me using the chat function. All right, except for those of you who have your cameras turned, who have your cameras that are spoiled and can't be turned on. You guys need to wait for my permission, right? And then I'll check back with you when you're back. Because those of you who have your cameras turned on, I can see when you're back, because I can see you right through your camera. But those of you who don't, all right, you can't. All right, so be respectful to everyone, your fellow students and me. All right, let's start. Narrative comprehension, first part. So what are evaluative judgments, right? It's a type of comprehension question that tests your ability to really understand and evaluate what you are reading. So it moves, from literal to inferential, like what I said just now, right? There are quite a bit of inferential questions, all right, to ask you to make judgments about what you're reading over here, all right? So sometimes, okay, it becomes harder when it's inferential. So you have to evaluate whether something is true or not based on some inferences that you make in the story regarding the characters, all right? Sometimes you just have to read that story and then you can literally tell, because it's said very obviously by the author, right, that is true, and then you can write your answer directly from that. So these are called evaluative questions. All right, so it appears in these different forms here. All right, like asking you, what are the effect on the reader, right? Or rather, is the writer's view accurate, right? What does this character suggest about the other character? Or how might this character have a positive effect on another character or an event later on in the story and stuff like that, okay? So as you can tell, these types of questions, right, they are not easy because it requires you to judge for yourself and infer a lot by yourself. Like they can give you a story, but as you're reading it, will you really ask yourself, oh, what kind of effect does this word have on me? Or what kind of effect does this sentence have on me when the author tells me this? You don't do that, right? Unless you're very, you're very big on thinking reflectively, okay, on your own thinking about your thinking. Okay. So normally when you read, right, you won't think about something like that until you actually see these types of questions. Then you will go, oh yeah, what kind of effect does it have on me when I read it just now? Or maybe I think differently from my friends. If my friends were to read this, what kind of effects do I think it will have on them? Because I'm not I don't think like my friends in the same way, that kind of thing, right? Or over here, they're asking you, is the writer's view accurate, right? Then you have to provide your own point. Why is accurate or why is not accurate? And sometimes for questions like these, okay, boys and girls, there is actually no one correct answer. It's how well you can argue that your answer is correct, right? That actually determines whether you get it right or wrong. Okay, so like this one, is the writer's view accurate? So unless the story, right, is very, very obvious that the writer is inaccurate or the writer is very biased on one side or something, right? Most of the time, you are able to argue whether the writer's view is accurate or inaccurate, right? There's got to be something in the story that tells you that in the end, maybe the writer is writing as himself, as the main character. Then in the end, the main character suffered something, like met with some kind of misfortune. So the writer's view was inaccurate, right? Because the character who is the writer in the story thought that the situation was great, but in the end, right, the situation turned out to be really bad, that kind of thing. So you can say that's why the writer's view was inaccurate. Or, on the flip side, depending on the story once again, you could actually say that, oh, the writer's view was actually quite accurate, right? The writer was actually quite cautious about entering the party. And in the end, right, he really got pranked by his friend and stuff like that, so on and so forth. Okay, so lots of inferences going on over here. I would say for most of the questions, right, when you enter Sec 3, all right, most of the questions would be inferential. Now you're in Sec 1, I think your teacher should be quite kind to you. Like it would be like half. So like for if there's like 8 questions, right? The last question would definitely be a table question. So that's out. All right. The table question is the one that asks you about paragraph 1 to 2, what is the main emotion the writer is trying to show you? Then paragraph 3, what's the main emotion? Paragraph 4 and 5, what's the main emotion? That one, that table question. That's the last question. Okay, but for questions 1 to 7, it's up to the teacher what kind of questions they want to use and how they want to ask it. So for your case in Sec 1, all right, most schools, I would say, would have like half inferential questions or half literal questions. Sometimes they are nicer and they give you like maybe 6 literal questions and 2 inferential questions because they don't want you to score too badly for the exam. If you score too badly for the exam, they might be afraid that your parents come and ask them and say, oh, what's happening? Am I going to be worried and stuff like that? And then the teachers would have more work to do, right? So think about it from the teacher's perspective as well. All right. they don't want to set an exam for you that's too hard, such that everyone's failing, and then the parents come complaining at school and saying, oh, what's happening? Okay, why is everyone failing? What kind of exams are you setting over here? Do you know it's very unmotivational to my kids, right? Or they set it too easy, then everyone scores very well. And if everyone scores very well, right, then what have you learned? Basically, everyone like, oh, did we all learn very well together? No, right? So they have to set the exam at a just right challenge kind of level. So it challenges you, right, a little bit, but it's not so challenging that you give up before you even, complete the paper properly. All right, so think about that. All right, don't need to be too stressed about evaluative judgment questions. Just be careful in the way you infer, because I realize a lot of you have really, really weird inferences when you read stories like this. And I say it's weird, maybe because you don't have a lot of life experiences on what is actually happening in reality, or you might be reading too many fictional books so you lose touch with reality, or you might be playing too many games such that you lose touch with reality. Yeah? Like I had a student come up and tell me something like, I think he was playing too much Roblox or something, right? And then he came up and then he told me, it's very easy, Che. We can just chop down the tree, right? And then we have wood. It's like to justify his story, right? Then I was asking him, I was like, do you know how long it takes to chop down a tree with an axe? And he's like, just one chop can already. Then I was like, huh? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't even make sense sometimes. Okay, so do consider reality when you are making your evaluative judgments for these types of questions. Okay, so when we read a story, all right, we are constantly evaluating, or rather this is the assumption by the teacher who wrote this that we are constantly evaluating. I know that some of us don't evaluate the story at all times. You're just reading the story because you enjoy reading it. Okay, so wondering where the story is leading, how the characters will deal with the situation, and so on. Yes, we might think about that when we're reading, or we might not. All right, so read this beginning of a narrative, noting how you react to what you read and where you think the narrative is heading. All right, so go ahead. All right, I'll give you some time. Read this by yourself. All right, and then let me know what your thoughts are. In the meantime, I'll see what work you guys have done so far for me online. Ooh, very good. Big shout out to David, Chloe, Zixuan, Galvin, Kirana, and Ziqi for completing your work online. Good on you guys. Great job. So yeah, so Unluck says, he feels very paranoid. Wesley, I didn't see yours here. Not sure why. Did you click on the submit button? It's about CCAs. Could you have done the wrong one? Was it about CCAs, guys? The comprehension for today, it's not about CCAs, right? It's about marking exam scripts, isn't it? Yes, Wesley. I think you did the I think you did the other one. That's right. So Unluck says after reading this, he feels very paranoid. So where do you think this story is heading, Unluck, based on what you've read so far? And how about the rest of you? How did you react when you read this beginning? Let me know in the chat.